Hello, today we're going to look at graphing linear inequalities. This is really similar to graphing a linear equation. The difference between an equation and inequality, just like when we were solving inequalities, is that instead of having an equal sign, we have some sort of inequality sign. So from a graphing standpoint, we are going to graph them very much like when we graphed y equals mx plus b equations. We plot the y-intercept, which is b. We use the slope, which is m, to plot as many other points as will fit on our graph. And then here's where things get a little different. With an inequality, there is, instead of just being a line, there is a line with some sort of shading involved, because the points that work for that inequality aren't just the points on the line, it includes a shaded region as well, because we have an entire solution set. So once you have your line plotted, you're going to connect the points either with a solid or dashed line, depending on what your inequality looks like. And then you're going to shade the graph either below or above the line, again, depending on what your inequality sign is. It'll make more sense if we just do a few examples, so let's try it. So for this first one, my y-intercept, or b, is 5. So I'm going to go to 5 on my y-axis. My slope is 8 over 5. Since it's a positive slope, I'm going to go up 8 and to the right 5. I don't have room to go up 8 and to the right 5 without going off my graph, so I can do the opposite of both. I can go down 8 and to the left 5, and that gives me one more point that fits on my graph. That's exactly like what we've done in the past. Here's where things get a little bit different. Since it is a less than or equal to, any line that has an equal to with it is going to be a solid regular line. So I'm going to connect those with a solid line, as I usually do. And then we have to look at our shading. Since it is a less than or equal to, I'm going to shade below the line. And so I'm going to shade everything that is underneath that line. And if you're doing this by hand, you can just kind of do some squiggles here. It doesn't have to be anything pretty. Any point that is on the orange line or in the yellow shading works for this inequality. That is our solution set. Let's try another one. So this time, my y-intercept is 1, so I go to 1 on my y-axis. My slope is kind of hidden. Negative x is the same as negative 1x, which is also the same as negative 1 over 1x. So since it's a negative slope, I'm going to go down 1, right 1, and repeat that pattern as many times as I can. Since we do have shading involved, we want to make our line go all the way across the graph. So I can also go up 1, left 1 to extend my line the other way. From here, let's look at our inequality. My inequality is greater than or equal to. Greater than or equal to is also a solid line. And then since it's greater than or equal to, I'm going to be shading above the line. Since I have greater than or equal to, I'm going to shade above. And so again, if you're doing this by hand, you can just kind of squiggle and do your best. All of the points above that orange line are part of my solution set, as well as all the lines on the orange line, or all the points on the orange line. Moving right along. For the next one, my y-intercept is 2. My slope is negative 6 over 5, so I'm going to go down 6 and right 5. I don't have room to fit any other more points on my graph. My inequality this time is greater than. When it's a regular greater than or regular less than, we use a dashed or dotted line instead of a solid line, which if you're drawing these by hand, just be as neat as you can. Easier said than done sometimes. And then how am I shading? Since it's a greater than, I'm going to shade above the line. And so my shading goes above the line. The dashed line means that points on the line are not included in our solution set. So anything that is in this blue part shaded above the dashed line is something that works for our inequality. Trying a few more. Y-intercept this time is 4. Slope is also 4, which you might remember is the same as 4 over 1. I don't have room to go up 4, right 1, so instead I can go down 4, left 1, opposite of both. And I have room to do that one more time. Now let's look at our inequality sign. It is a less than. Less than, we are going to have a dashed line. Again, if you're drawing these by hand, do your best. And we are going to shade below that line because it is a less than. And so I'm going to shade everything that's underneath that line, which would be this portion right here. When your line is pretty close to being vertical, like this one was, knowing where below is can be a little tricky. Since my y-intercept was 4, I look for y values that are below 4, which is down in this part, which would be the part I shaded. Now, the last two inequalities look different than what we graphed before, so I got to tell you a little bit of information. Let's pretend this was an equal sign for a hot second. If I have x equals number, that is going to be a vertical line. We haven't seen those before, at least this year in this class. And it goes through that number on the x-axis. So if this was x equals -4, I would go to -4 on the x-axis and draw a vertical line through it. I'm still going to do a vertical line here. Since it is a greater than or equal to, it will be a solid vertical line. Like so. So x equals number, solid vertical line. Now I've got to figure out where I need to shade. So it says x is greater than or equal to -4. So normally that would be above. However, I can't really go above a vertical line. Think about what greater than means. It means numbers that are bigger than -4, which is going to be all the numbers to the right of -4 on the x-axis. So this whole section of the graph here that I'm shading in blue is my solution set along with the points on the solid line. Now let's do one with a y equals. If I have y equals number, so x equals number is a vertical line, y equals number is going to be the opposite, which is a horizontal line. And we go through that number on the y-axis. So the number here is -2. I'm going to go through -2 on the y-axis. I'm going to draw a horizontal line. Since it is a less than, it'll be a dashed line. That's not very straight, but you get the idea. And since it is less than, I'm going to be shading below. So everything underneath that horizontal line is part of our solution set. On your homework, you will be matching graphs to their inequalities. And so the easiest way to do that would be to use Desmos. So I'm going to show you how to do these in Desmos really quickly too. I'm going to go back through all of our original equations. I'm going to erase some things so we can read things better and show you what these look like in Desmos. So to type these into Desmos, pretty similar to what we've been doing. Type in exactly what you see. So typing in y, that's not tricky. But we have a less than or equal to. If you go to your keyboard to get your less than or equal to, we have a button that looks exactly like that. And then typing in everything else is pretty straightforward. 8/5 is 8 divided by 5. Arrow over to get your x out of the bottom of the fraction, and then plus 5. Once you're done typing, your graph quits moving around. Notice this graph looks a lot like what we just made here, and that's the whole point. You can check your slope, you can check your y-intercept, it all checks out. Graphing the next one, my inequality is now greater than or equal to, so hit the greater than or equal to button. -x plus 1 gives us the graph that we're looking for. Next up, y greater than, I have a button for that. -6 divided by 5, arrow over to get x out of the denominator, plus 2, looks like what we made. Next up, y less than 4x plus 4, looks like our picture, has the dashed line and everything. And then same idea with our vertical and horizontal lines. X greater than or equal to is right here, -4. Notice we have that solid line with the shading going to the right. And last but not least, y less than -2. Looks like what we have here. So feel free to use Desmos to help these out, especially when you go to do your homework, since you'll be matching graphs instead of writing them by hand, because trying to do a graph by hand in Canvas doesn't work so well. That is it for today. I hope you have a fantastic day.